all had a good holiday, whatever it is that you celebrate. I hope you had the people you love night. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Blue Ribbon Lounge podcast.
Welcome back to the lounge on this Monday after Christmas.
Heck yeah. I hope you all
stay dry.
Because you know what? Being wet sucks.
Yeah.
Unless you're like in a pool or something. That's different.
Well, there was always a thing, like when I was in the Marines, where it's like you can handle being wet and you can handle being cold. But when you're wet and cold, it sucks.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We got another great episode for you, traveling back in time to the ancient pyramids.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that, I guess.
All the pyramids. I think it said on the list pyramids.
That's it, and that's all.
Yeah.
And it was probably because I had seen something come across my YouTube feed at one time, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. Put that on the list.
Pyramids.
So yeah, the great. What I checked out mostly was you know what? It was hard not to see that Ancient Aliens off the History Channel.
Yeah,
it was that had like all the views. So put that.
If you look up pyramids, it's all goes back to aliens.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
Before we start though, to give a shout out, number one fan Cam. It's her birthday yesterday.
Oh, happy birthday, Cam.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Per the pod or per the recording?
Per when it comes out.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be on Sunday.
Happy belated birthday.
Tomorrow. No, it's 2 days from now. I'll have to remember to text her.
I'm sure you will.
I'm really bad at that. Usually someone else texts me to tell me to text the person.
Yeah. Hey, don't forget to text your sister.
Yeah, or your niece or your cousin.
I'll probably be editing this and put it out on Sunday, so I'll hear that again and text you.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. So
pyramids.
So, pyramids. Any polygorical shaped base, flat triangular sides which join at a common point called an apex. So I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be four sides. It can be as many sides as long as they all come to a point at the top.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I've seen a three-sided pyramid. That's a D4?
That's a D4, yeah.
That's a D4?
Yeah.
Yeah. What about? But if it's a circle, it's a cone.
Yes.
So that's different.
That's canonical.
Canonical.
Yeah.
Dave. Look at you.
But I think that also stands for like if something in your lore is fact, but something else is made up, the fact that's a canonical.
Okay.
Like Star Wars, like, oh, this happened in this movie, but that's not canonical. It actually, Luke Skywalker blew up the Death Star.
Oh, okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
They're like fanfics. They're not canonical.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
That's a good word. I'll have to use that a couple of times.
Yeah. But a pyramid is also one of the most stable forms of construction because the base is bigger at the bottom. Well, of course. And so, like,
unless you build it upside down.
Right. But since it's bigger at the bottom and smaller at the top, there's less outward slumping, like force on the sides.
Okay.
So then there's less slumping and like breaking down because the pressure is more at the base than at the top. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, because like, I mean, buildings nowadays, they're like built to be able to sway in the wind.
Yeah.
But like that wouldn't be necessary for a pyramid, like the Luxor.
Yeah.
It was Las Vegas, Nevada.
Right. Even though they say that the Great Pyramid, if you look at it from the top down, you can see that it has 8 sides.
8.
Yeah,
yes.
Because they kind of
bow in
in the middle. Mm-hmm. But they say that's because the outside, like the white limestone layer that was on there before it broke off, was still smooth. Like you wouldn't have been able to tell that it bowed in, and that the reason they do that, they thought, was because wind and like a tidal force, it would still like absorb that and not get so messed up.
Oh, interesting.
But the other thing that I've heard is that those lines on the sides of the pyramids were actually how they moved the stones to the top.
Oh.
Because if you were gonna, Because supposedly they said the Great Pyramid was built in 20 years.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So you'd want to be building all sides at the same time.
Okay.
And so supposedly the way the bricks are made is they're longer than they are wide.
Okay.
So if you if
like
you
a
can
brick.
if you can tilt it up, and then the center of gravity will be above the brick that you laid before, so then you can it'll be easier to flip it up.
Oh, okay.
And so then they just flipped them up, and so then that middle part then was filled in later after they got all the way to the top.
Oh, okay, I see. Because when you think of the Great Pyramids, you think of like the step sides.
Yeah.
And I guess when I think of a pyramid, I think of smooth sides, which is how the original pyramids would have been, with like a gold cap
Yeah.
on the very top.
Yeah.
And that was all knocked off, I heard, from an earthquake, is what
Yes.
the most common
Yeah, in like the
accepted answer is.
12th century or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were built like 4,500 years ago, supposedly under the direction of Pharaoh Khufu,
Yeah, 2700 BC.
which is like a long time ago.
Yes. Yeah, like have you ever seen 300?
Yes.
Like Leonidas?
Yeah.
He died in 450 BC, which, if you do the math, give or take a couple hundred years, he's right in the middle of the pyramids being built and us doing this podcast today.
Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, and so like Julius Caesar is closer to like a McDonald's being built than the pyramids being built.
That's crazy. That's
Yeah.
nuts. Well, and maybe that's why it's a little hard to believe that it was 20 years ago, because it was like the time span of 20 doesn't really put into the kind of the thought of like 4,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Because when you hear 20, it's such a small number, and you're like, that can't be right.
Yeah.
But like, I'm 36,
Right.
and so I've lived for over 20 years.
Right. So when they're like, "Oh, Elf turned 20 this year," and you're like, "What?"
Yeah.
But you're like, "Oh yeah, it did come out in 2004 or whatever."
Did it really come out in 2004?
I was using that as an example.
okay.
But there are movies that are like, I think The Crow. This was the 30th anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Well, then like it was just the 50th anniversary of Clerks, I think.
I don't think so. I think Clerks was a 90s movie also.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking of 25.
Maybe 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should stop saying
Stuff.
fake news. On
No,
here.
but that makes sense though. Like if you think about, you have $20, you're like, I can buy 4 things at the grocery store if you're lucky, or you have $4,000. That's kind of a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the distance away, man, that because Leonidas was using steel weapons,
I believe so. Yeah.
and the Egyptians would have just had copper, maybe bronze,
Yeah.
maybe stone
Yeah.
weapons and tools. But yeah, it was built in about 20 years. The Great Pyramid itself is made up of 2.3 million gigantic limestone blocks. And so the limestone blocks that they used to build it were like yellow limestone.
Yeah.
But then it sounded like they used white limestone as that covering.
Yeah.
And the stones ranged in size from like 2 tons all the way up to 80 tons. Let's see how heavy that is in like pounds. What's 80 tons in pounds? I'm Googling it on the fly.
I'm guessing 80,000.
You're probably right, because a ton is like 1,000 pounds. 176,000 pounds.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between a metric ton and an imperial ton? I don't think so.
No, maybe not.
Neat.
Yeah. Oh, and age-wise, when the pyramids were being built, that's also the time that Stonehenge was being built.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I guess I would have thought the pyramids were older than Stonehenge.
I thought so too until I was like doing my research.
And then and some of those blocks were mined from an area now known as Central Field, which is approximately 500 miles south of Giza. Giza being where the pyramids are.
Yes.
The 3 Great Pyramids. There's like 80 pyramids in Egypt.
Yeah.
And then like I had seen a thing where the pyramids in Giza are the biggest pyramids.
Yes.
But like the Mayans were building pyramids all up and down Central America.
Yeah. Well, the largest pyramid by volume is the Great Pyramid of Cholula.
Okay.
In Mexico in the state of Puebla.
Okay.
So like
it's a big fat one or something.
yeah, it's wider than it is tall.
Okay.
And it's the one, I don't know if we talked about it in our missing tribes episode, but that one was there, and the conquistadors, whoever came and took over, they actually went and built a church on top of it to be like,
those fuckers.
yeah, your thing's not as cool.
Dad,
and I think it was in the news lately, like they started doing excavations around it and then realized there was a whole like bunch of like a whole city that was inside of that pyramid.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing about these shorter Central American, Latin American pyramids is that the Egyptian pyramids are built in a desert.
Yeah.
You see them probably from 100 miles away.
Yeah.
Because they're so big. But these Latin American ancient pyramids are all shorter, and there's a dense jungle around it.
Yeah.
So there is potentially thousands of pyramids, many of which have not even been found because the whole place hasn't been just like swept or something.
Yeah, and they've just now started doing that LiDAR thing, and they've started to uncover some of them.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, the country with the most pyramids is Sudan, which is next to Egypt.
Okay.
And they were built during the Nubian Empire. Around like
Nubian.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like, wasn't there a Star Wars joke in there somewhere? Nubian.
No, but they were the African kingdom.
Okay.
And they actually ruled from Egypt to Sudan in the where is that? 650 to 300 BC. And that's when they built most of these pyramids, and they built 220 of them. And most of theirs are a lot steeper and a lot narrower, so they're like super pointy pyramids.
Oh, almost a little bit more like an obelisk type looking thing.
Almost, but
an obelisk would be like flat up to an amount and then peaked at the top.
Right, but theirs are like taller, skinny pyramids. Almost look like if you like made a block version of a Christmas tree.
Okay, that's actually kind of what I was exactly thinking.
Yeah. And then I don't think it's Greece, I think it's Rome has more obelisks than Egypt does.
Okay.
And I think because most of them they stole from Egypt.
I was gonna ask. Yeah, and I don't remember exactly what we talked about in the Mayan episode, but you said the largest country, because since these things have been built, the whole landscape and social landscape of the world has changed.
Yeah.
And that's kind of an interesting thought too. Like, maybe there's probably more pyramids built by a certain people, but then you got generations and generations of war, and they draw lines in different areas.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting concept. And
that's also what I heard about the Sudanese pyramids, is not a lot of people know about them because they've been in like civil war for so long, so tourism has been restricted, so they're not obviously as popular because you have to like jump through a lot more hoops and maybe put yourself in more danger to go see them.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a lot of the same thing as the Mayan temples, because you got to jungle bushcraft through to get anywhere. And
then there's maybe drug smugglers and people you have to like deal with.
and then there's probably the same thing in Sudan and maybe even Egypt. I heard Egypt is so poor that the black market for ancient relics and stuff is what a lot of their money comes from.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't want to say a lot, but a significant portion of the money. Like, you'll have an archaeological dig get uncovered, and like civilians are stealing a bunch of stuff, and then there's like a third party, maybe some sort of drug cartel type, artifact cartel, middleman,
right?
That knows how to get it out and stuff like that.
Yeah, because that's a thing that, like, with the alien community, one of their things is like, oh, a mummy has never been found in any of these pyramids. But that's because by the time they started going into them, they'd been looted.
Oh.
And so, of course, when archaeologists are doing like serious like investigation or exploring, all the good stuff is taken. And I saw this article, and this lady said she lives in Peru, and a lot of their artifacts and stuff, the Peruvian government or like the archaeological societies kind of control it, and so what they're let to the public is limited compared to maybe what they're selling to like museums or like private collectors. So I can see kind of the same thing happening in Egypt.
And there is maybe something to be said that, you know, the riches of the past don't really serve the present, you know.
Yeah.
If Egypt is the most wealthy country, you know, at some point, does it really serve the people if it's all buried away in pyramids and tombs and stuff?
Yeah, and then people are breaking in and robbing them and then making their little fortune.
Yeah. Or archaeologically digging into them.
Yeah. Well, because there's that one, because when I would say like I'm just going to lump the Persian Empire into like the Middle Eastern area, but they came, and when they were like in control of that area, they thought that I think it's called the Red Pyramid, or the smallest of the three pyramids. They thought that it was full of gold, and so there's a big scar on it from where. In the book, 1,000 Arabian Nights, one of the stories is that one of their kings didn't like these monuments, so he's like, well, our people are better. We're going to go and destroy them. We're going to take them down to the ground because that's how strong we are. And the story goes that they tried for like 3 months, and then we're finally like, and then they sucked and couldn't do it. But then that's probably just a cover-up, because you'd rather be like, oh, we tried to destroy them and then failed, so we're just kind of like, we exhausted our resources, we're going to go home. That's a better story than saying, oh, no, we came over here to try to steal their gold. And so then if you look at how it is, they think that they broke in to try to find that inner chamber that maybe held riches.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That is, it's like when you burn your hand on the cookie tray or something.
Yeah.
And your mom's like, were you trying to take those cookies? And you're like, no, I was just trying to help cool them off or something.
Yeah, I was just going to move it over there.
Yeah, trying to deflect.
Right.
That's funny. I wonder if there are larger scale concepts of that. I don't know if do you listen to Dan Carlin? He's a history guy.
I think I've heard his name. He's the hardcore history guy.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've not.
Okay, I got sucked into it.
He's behind a paywall though, right?
Not all of it.
Oh, okay.
There's some stuff.
All right.
And I bought some of it, and I'll download it and give it to you sometime if you want it.
Okay.
It's very long though. It's like 6-hour episodes.
Yeah, I heard the one on Genghis Khan is like long, but in depth.
Yeah, and he's a great storyteller. But anyways, so like we were saying before, they had copper and stone tools at the time, plus having to move all of these large stones several miles from a nearby city quarry. And I think that's a lot of where people get the idea that, oh, it has to be aliens because people couldn't have done it. And I did see a couple of videos where like Egyptologists or archaeologists or whatever had recreated tools and were trying to recreate the cuts and stuff.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that, Dave?
Well, the ones I saw, the way the archaeologists were going at it, they aren't stonemasons, and so they're just whacking at the stuff. And I seen the guy with the chisel, and you can tell like he's just like it's bouncing every time he hits it. So it's not like he's like knows how to use the tool.
Yeah.
And because I've seen videos, like little reels or stuff, and it'll be a guy with just like a wooden wedge and a sledgehammer, and he finds a crack and then just breaks a huge boulder off with just like working at it for maybe 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've seen guys that have chisels and stuff, and in like a matter of minutes they create like an ornate capstone for like, you know, like the border on the top of a building or something.
Yeah.
And I think you're right about that, is that like, these guys aren't, they didn't learn the ways of their father's father's father.
Right. Because when I saw they were like, they recreated, they're like, this is a recreation of a copper saw, and the teeth were all at different spaces, and it was like flat. They weren't like pointy. And then the two guys that they had were just like, shh, 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 shh. And they're like, we'll come back in an hour. It will be like 4 centimeters. I'm like, well,
yeah,
you've got a dull tool, and these guys are not like giving it their all.
Yeah. And I thought for the longest time, and this was a misnomer for the history of the pyramids, they did say for a long time that they were built by slaves. Like,
yeah,
the king had like 140,000 slaves doing
right
this. And I thought that was kind of practical. But they have recently uncovered small purpose-built towns,
yeah,
for like that had like bunks and kitchens and dining halls,
right.
And they were kind of talking that slaves would not have been treated this good. They wouldn't have had
right. They were paid
them.
laborers.
Yes, yeah. And so, and it sounded like there was like kind of a main workforce and then an auxiliary workforce, and they would swap them out. But even then, I think knowing how to do things, I think we lost a lot of skill.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of the arguments you'll hear are like, the pyramid is accurate to true north by twice as accurate as another building in France.
Yeah.
That was built to be accurate to true north.
Yeah, it was like some observatory.
Yeah, French observatory.
Yeah.
And we didn't even know how accurate it was until we had satellites to be able to measure it.
Yeah.
But I think when you're building stuff and you have limited tools, you learn how to use those tools really well.
Yeah, but what they lacked in tools, they made up with engineering.
Yes.
Because they did have a square level, which would be like kind of like a level on two sides, so you can do the top and the side to make sure it's level at the same time. And they had they called it a 3x4x5 framing square to make sure everything was squared up.
Okay.
And they invented the cubit rod, so then that they used that for the measurement, so everything was to the same measurement instead of just trying to like pace it out or something.
And I had heard that they did use the cubit as opposed to like feet or inches, and a cubit at the time was from your index finger to your elbow. And I guess in my head I was justifying that if it took 20 years, one guy could be in charge of that. You know, and it would always be the same.
Or they cut the rod from one guy.
Yeah, and I bet it was from like the pharaoh or like the main engineer dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, having the rods cut adds up. That's like a ruler.
Yeah, and the pyramid is actually like on this base.
Yes.
And so if they made the base, they squared that up, and they then lined it up with the stars, and you do it over like a couple days, or even if that takes a month to make sure that with line it up with the stars, and then you cut it, and then you make sure that that's plumb or square, then everything you build on top of it is gonna be like pretty right on.
Yeah, because then you'd have your 1x2x3 or whatever it was.
Yeah, your template there.
Yeah, that you just kind of like, oh, we need to move it over, one hammer hit,
right?
Or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and they also said that they would probably have put their best masons on the corners, because if you can keep the corners right, then the inside will just fall in line.
And yeah, that base, what was that called? I think it started with like a P or something.
It was like an anduit?
Maybe.
Something like that? Maybe I'm wrong.
It's all right. We'll figure it out. I'll see it in my notes eventually.
But like they also learned, because their earlier pyramids, like the one at Dozier or Sozier, I don't know how you pronounce Djoser, but there were earlier pyramids besides the Great Pyramids, so they learned a lot from those pyramids.
Yeah.
Like,
because the Great Pyramid wasn't the first one they built.
Yeah, and they learned how to do like passages inside that wouldn't collapse, or like not to dig under the foundation, and how to keep things square. And then they took all those, learn as you go, learn from your mistakes, and then applied that to the Great Pyramids. Yeah, like make sure you build on silent rock. Make sure you use precise measurements, not like everybody's finger to elbow. Don't make the chambers in the pyramids, not under them. And there's a bunch of other ones about like how to make the tunnels inside to have like a certain, I don't remember what they called it, but it was like a
pitch or a grade,
a Kubert pitch or something, and that way it looks ornate, but it also has function.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
that's cool. And like we're kind of talking about, the distance from us to them.
Yeah.
Because the base that it's built on is supposed to be like one of the flattest things in the world.
Yeah.
And then you hear about these stones so big and being carved with such ancient technology that you can't even fit a credit card in them.
Yeah.
In between them. And I think that is something to be said about, like, it does seem unbelievable.
Right.
Because you got people slapping together fucking 30-story buildings in a weekend now.
Yeah, I've been in some people's kitchens, and you're like their countertops aren't come together at a good joint.
But I think with technology comes the loss of that engineering principle.
Yeah, because you kind of get more lazy because you're letting the tools do the work and not the math.
Yes, yeah. And I do it all the time. I'm by no means trained in woodworking.
Yeah.
But if I put a couple of pieces of wood together and then cut them all at one time, it looks flush. You know?
Right.
As opposed to cutting a bunch of precise cuts and then putting them together, which is probably a better idea.
Well, with the tightness of them, it's been theorized that maybe they had like an ancient form of concrete.
Oh.
Because there was a fellow that analyzed pyramid stones, and they were like denser at the bottom and had more like air bubble kind of space at the top, so they weren't completely solid. And then he like made this concrete with stuff that they would have had from like the river basin, and like you can get like sulfate from campfires, and you add a little salt to it and mix it up, and then he let them dry and then did a cross section of that, and it was very similar. Okay. And he sent his samples out to a couple of different labs like blindly, just be like, hey, can you analyze these? And they all came back with the same results, that they were the same makeup, the same
okay.
kind of thing. But then it's kind of like it's a theory, because then Egyptologists were like, no, we did this plus the rocks that are in the quarry, and they're the exact same makeup, so you're wrong and we're right.
And that was one thing that I had heard a lot of, is that there's a lot of like gatekeeping and like, this is what we think, so this is what's right.
Yeah.
And I think that's certainly a problem with humans,
right?
Because you can't know everything if you're not willing to keep your mind open. But then when you got how long had they been talking about pyramids built by aliens?
Yeah,
and you just got to get tired of it eventually,
right? But at the same time, like, it's even stuff that seems plausible, they don't even want to discuss. Like, there was a guy, he was talking about like internal ramps is how they built the pyramid. But mostly he was saying like they use this counterbalance pulley system to get the bigger rocks up there, and that there's evidence in like the Queen's Chamber or whatever, where there's like on the side of the wall there's like scrapes or like markings that only could be like if someone drug rocks past it. So that'd be the counterweight to get these big slabs up that are inside the King's Chamber. And that there's this step that's right in the middle of the pyramid that's like kind of squares everything off for the rest, like from that point up. They kind of use that. It's what they suspected. But in the original pictures, before they like did this like repair on it to make it look like how they thought it should look, it's got like a V in it, which would be perfect for a rope to lay in for this counter measure thing. But since they repaired it, and if they repaired it incorrectly, then they would have to say they were messed up.
Yeah.
So instead, they just tell this guy that he's full of shit, and there's no way that could happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang, I forgot what I was gonna say. And they were talking. I had seen a lot of stuff like these pyramids took 20 years to build.
Yeah. Well, just the Great Pyramid.
The Great Pyramid, yeah.
Not all three of them.
Yeah. The Great Pyramid, which is the biggest pyramid in the world.
Yes.
Took...
But not by mass.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Dimensionally.
Yeah.
Height-wise.
Yes.
Height-wise. Took them 20 years to build. And they were talking about a pyramid in... Mexico, that was smaller, that took them like 120 years to build.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think you're comparing apples to oranges, and fruit can be compared sometimes.
Yes.
But in different ways. Like, you can't.
Yeah, because
you got a clear jungle.
Right.
You got different contraptions because they're two potentially completely different people with completely different ideas.
Yeah, and maybe like the mines didn't really have the pulley system, so maybe they were just all heaving these.
Heave-hoeing.
Yeah.
And then I had also seen there was like a quarry that was in France or something like that was about the same dimensional size.
Yeah, like if you took the pyramid and turned it upside down.
Yeah.
And stuck it in the ground.
And it took them like 20. It took them a long time to fill that in with just dirt and dump trucks. And that's not
even the same.
It's not the same concept. And I can understand that you think that just backing a bunch of trucks up to a hole and dumping it is easier, but you had these people who their whole civilization was essentially building this pyramid.
Yeah.
And the people who weren't building it were baking bread for them and moving water and stuff.
Right. And
they had built a bunch more before this.
Right.
So they were a well-oiled machine.
And they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because that's what they were. That's like if. Yeah. Everyone's a mason.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like if everyone's an electrician and you're like, oh, we have to wire this fucking high rise. You're like, oh, yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would take me a long time to do it.
Right.
But I'm not an electrician.
Exactly. But if you have a whole society of electricians, you can knock that out pretty quick.
A whole society of electricians.
Yeah.
And there's like a bunch of math on the Great Pyramid. Like, the pyramid is geocentric to the center of Earth.
Yeah, that's what that means. If you draw a line out from the corners,
all four corners, all the way around the Earth, and they meet in the middle, and the other side.
they cross the most land mass that you can.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'm like, that seems stupid, right?
yeah. Like,
Who
like-
gives a fuck?
like that's something that you just happen. Because I actually heard something that actually the exact point is like 100 miles away or 100
Exactly.
kilomiles away.
Exactly. Like, you're not telling me that there's not a spot where it would skirt a couple more things,
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the Great Pyramid is super aligned with True North. But if you learn from your father, who learned from his grandfather, who
Yeah.
learned from his father, like the stars and stuff, like the people from like Hawaii and stuff that sail by boat,
Yeah.
a huge ocean, and they somehow find other islands.
Yeah. By using the stars.
The stars, yeah. When you have done that as a society for your entire civilization,
Yeah.
you know how things work.
Yeah. And back there was no light pollution, so the sky was clear. On a clear day, you probably see billions of stars. You see all the stars.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah.
You had no light pollution at all.
Yeah.
And then the invention of pi was discovered in 250 BC, which is like 4,000 years after the pyramid.
Yeah.
But the height of the pyramid is the exact radius of if you were to draw a circle touching all four corners of the pyramid. And again, I think a lot of this stuff is just math that just adds up.
Yeah. Because if you can build something perfectly square, and it's going to the math's going to work out.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking that's like the golden ratio, where they said if you draw a line from the top to the bottom, like not on a corner, like straight in the middle of it, and then so if you pretty much like make a degree, like from the bottom to the middle of one side, and then from that up to the top, if you take the amount from the top and divide it by the amount to the base, then you get the golden ratio. But that could work with any sized pyramid as long as it's plumb or true or square.
And I can't remember if the golden ratio is also called Fibonacci sequence or if it's different. I think it's different because Fibonacci sequence is you add two numbers together to get the next number.
Yeah.
And then but what I'm saying is if it wasn't the golden ratio, it would be a different set of numbers. When you analyze something for long enough, you see patterns because people want to see patterns.
Yeah, but it's also like pi is the circumference divided by the radius, and you get pi.
It's something along those lines.
Yeah, so any circle divided by its radius, you get pi. Then if you're gonna make it's like you're gonna find it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? If you're like, oh, if you take a quarter and you do the radius divided by this, it comes out to 3.1514. It's like, yeah, but did they make? Oh my God, that's an alien quarter. Like,
it's an alien 2-bit piece.
Yeah. So it's kind of because it's like, oh, how could they do that? Well, if you can make it, you put all your best men on it, and you make it precise to the like umpteenth or whatever. Then yeah, any math that you throw at it is gonna turn out, as something.
Yeah, and there was some kind of weird stuff with like, the scale is a representation to Earth, like a 1 to the 43,200th degree. So if you upscaled the pyramid that much, it would fit perfectly in the upper hemisphere.
Yeah.
But and then also there was some stuff with like the radius, or that 243 kept coming up.
Yeah.
Which it's like The radius of the sun is 243,000 miles. The Earth wobbles on its axis 1 degree every 72 years, which is a multiple of 432 degrees. Like, that is the biggest one, where it's just like, you're just doing all this math. Like, have you ever seen that movie 9 or 32 or something?
23?
23, yes.
Yeah.
With Jim Carrey.
Where you just keep seeing it everywhere.
Yeah, fantastic movie.
Yeah.
And he goes crazy because of it. And
Yeah.
it's like that. It's like he's walking by house numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if you add those 3 numbers together, you get 23.
Yeah. There's this, not that I like Friends, but there's an episode of Friends. I'll have to look it up. I remember watching.
Wait, are you saying you hate Friends, or 'cause
well,
you
like,
went out of your way pretty far, Dave?
Well, the show, the TV show.
It was a good show.
I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to watch it, but if it's on, it's kind of like The Big Bang Theory. If it's on, it's fine, but I'm not going to be like, ooh.
I'm a Seinfeld guy.
Yeah. But there was one where maybe the Ross was trying to explain to Phoebe how some shit worked, and she's like,
he's the scientist, and she's kind of the spacey one.
And she's like, ill is just numbers, and he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, oh, there's this many soda cans on the counter, and if you take that by the room, and then that's like this and that, but that, and you divide it down, that's 2, and this is 2 people that are in here. Well, that's creepy. I have to leave. Like, so you can just throw numbers together and then get an outcome that fits your narrative.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like, oh, well, every 75 years it wobbles, and then if you take that and divide it by 12, because 12 is the number of pyramids you find within a radius of 10 miles from the pyramid, and then you divide it by 10, which is the miles, and then, yeah.
And along with that math, there's also things that like we were talking about, the copper tools that an archaeologist who is not a blacksmith or a tool maker made.
Yeah.
There's also videos of like cranes and trucks trying to pull big ass stones around and like totally collapsing. And and I think those types of,
but that's more like OSHA violation stuff.
I would think.
Yeah.
You gotta, where are they being recorded in some country that doesn't have OSHA, and they just like cobbled this crane together somehow?
Yeah, and most of the equipment does look old, like hand-me-down stuff. There's actually a cool video on YouTube. This guy, Wallington, from Flint, Michigan, he proved that one man can move 19,200 pound block by himself without using pulleys or any metal levers.
Okay.
He's got this huge block, and like you can get it to, you use like a seesaw kind of situation where you get lifted up, and then you can wedge a board under it, and then you flip it, lift the other side, wedge a board, and you do that, and you can seesaw it and get it up. He got it up 3 feet high, and then he dug a hole on one side, and then he tied a rope around one side and then under a log, and then he had weights so it was even, and then he slowly let the weights off the one side, and it tilted down until it went into the hole, and then he just had to wash away the sand until it got perfectly level, and he did it all by himself.
Wow.
Like just one dude.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was like a ton slab of stone he had.
Just one guy. Well, and right before this podcast, I just laid a bunch of bricks out on my driveway.
Yeah.
And like we were talking before, I'm not a mason.
Yeah.
And I had put like 8 blocks out there years ago, and they eventually just started like settling and getting uneven and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I got a bunch more blocks for free, so I was like, I'll put them in my backyard. And then I just learned from that first step, and man, I put those blocks in. They were really nice.
Yeah.
But I want to do cement there, so I took them all out, which I still am kind of kicking myself for.
Yeah.
But then I put them in the front yard, and goddamn, it looks even better.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you build one pyramid, and the next one's going to look better.
Yeah.
And you're gonna learn how to, especially if you're one guy, if you're 30 guys if you're 250
right.
guys.
Because this guy also shows how just with using like little pebbles, he can make a fulcrum point and then spin a block. And if you put 2, then you can spin it and it'll actually walk its way across like a way. Because he even like, I think his like son-in-law, he was like, what else can we move? And he's like, you want to move my pole barn? He's like, sure. And he set it up, and just him by himself ended up moving this guy's pole barn.
Yeah, that's a thing. There was like a city or there's a building in New York or something that they needed to move for like a highway, or when they first started building roads.
Yeah.
And so they like rotated it 100 or like maybe it was like 90 degrees.
Yeah.
But they just pick up a fucking 5-story building and like rotate it, pivot it on an axis.
There's a lighthouse in North Carolina, Hatteras, where I think the beach was starting to corrode, so they wanted to move it more inland, and I think they just used like timbers and like rolled it that way.
Yeah, and I had seen that they, well, and you know, there was something about the invention of the wheel wasn't until later.
Yeah.
But I think just because I think the wheel is different than using like timbers or something.
Yeah.
Other than spherical objects to move things, in my opinion. But I'm not a historian, so don't take my opinion on
this
it.
Wally guy also just using wood made like kind of like a triangle track, like where it's like a bunch of triangles, and then you can just easily roll a stone and it'll use its own momentum. And he's like moving these huge like 500, 600 pound
Where does this guy get all these big rocks?
I think it's mostly concrete. I think he makes it himself. He's retired.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But I had seen that they would like, and people would be like, but then you're doing this all on sand.
Yeah.
But they would wet the sand.
Right.
And like, I don't know if you've ever gone to the beach and like fallen on wet sand.
Yeah.
That shit is hard.
It is pretty hard.
And I think what you're talking about with that that angled kind of track, I think that is how I had heard they were moving the blocks from the quarry to the pyramid, where it was like they were like boards that were kind of set on top of each other.
Yeah.
So the amount that I don't know if they were kind of like rolling it, kind of like it would be up the pyramid, how you'd have that fulcrum.
Yeah.
Where like every time it would just like, as long as you're pivoting it lower than the center of gravity, it would just flip.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was like that or if it was like tracks where you're just like barely touching the stone, so the friction
is less.
Yeah, it was something like that. I was listening to it, so it was kind of hard to grasp instead of looking at it.
And they said they didn't have pulleys, but I don't know about that, because like,
I mean, maybe it's not a pulley, but it's just like over a board or like another stone thing.
Yeah, because I think I want to say Archimedes was the one who invented the pulley, but he also
is that owl on Sword in the Stone?
Yeah. But he also designed the biggest ship of the time.
Oh, okay.
And it was so big that they didn't know how to get it in the water. Because like they didn't have enough man force to like push it or like whatever. And he just rigged up a bunch of pulleys, and himself pulling on one was able to swing it in.
That's crazy. Because pulleys have a crazy like ratio.
Yeah.
Like one pulley is like 1-to-1, but then 2 pulleys is like 1-to-5.
Yeah, you do one at the top, one at the bottom, and if you keep doing that so many times, you can get it, so you can just maybe just do like 10 pounds of pressure and then lift like so many thousands of pounds.
Let's see here. Got a pulley ratio. Lateral pull down. Down plate produces 10 pounds of resistance. Well, and it's like the size of the pulleys and stuff. I thought maybe there would be like a chart for if you use regular ass pulleys.
Yeah, or if there's a bigger, like if your gear's bigger kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much torque you get.
Yeah, because if you look here, it's like you have one at the top to lift it, but if you have one at the top and then the bottom, and it's like hooked to a static point.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. And then you keep putting them in between themselves. That's interesting. Because I've never really done that, but I've seen things in passing.
You can do it like smaller and then bigger and then and it's all each pulley.
And then the pulleys themselves come to each other as well.
Yeah.
But if you're moving a boat, you just got to get it a couple inches off the ground.
Yeah, and then swing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, he was able to do it.
Fascinating.
Yeah, by himself. But he also made a death ray, supposedly.
Whoa!
By
hey, slow down, Archimedes.
Well, because there was an incoming armada that was going to sack their city.
Okay.
And he
like a magnifying glass.
Yeah, he polished a bunch of shields and was able to reflect the sun to a point, like a magnifying glass, and burn the ships.
Fuck yeah, dude. We should do that. Well, we can't do that anymore. Stuff's made out of metal, but we should have been doing that for a long time before this.
Yeah, and that's like one of those things where it's like, oh, but how did they do that? Like, well, it's just using math and physics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess it would also depend on where the sun is. If the sun's out, you just have a lot more nighttime battles if you had a bunch of those.
If you had a big ray gun. Yeah.
But if you're like, imagine having a ray gun on like a castle or something, and you're just like burning holes in guys.
Oh, yeah.
Or just like blinding everybody.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow, that'd be a crazy weapon.
Yeah. All right, I got some woo stuff.
Yeah, you do that. I gotta review some of my notes.
At size.org, PHYS, the University of ITMO, which is a Russian university, says that the Great Pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy inside of its chambers.
Oh, yeah.
If you bombard it with radio waves or a certain length of radio waves. Mm-hmm. But they just did this with a computer model. They didn't actually go and bombard the pyramid with radio waves because you have to get clearance from the national archaeologists people, and they're probably not going to let you do a lot of woo science.
Yeah.
But somehow they said that
they're not going to let you bombard the Great Pyramids with radio waves.
Yeah. But they said when they did this, it was able to that electromagnetic energy, that it concentrates it. They think that knowing this, they can use that information to make better sensors or solar panels. But they were talking about nano polygons. So if they make them like pyramids and then they bombard them and then they get bombarded with radio waves, they would collect more electromagnetic energy, and then you could use that to power stuff or whatever. But that's also, I don't know, I didn't really know if this site was official. And then coming from Russia, how much is it true? How much is they just saying that they can do stuff?
Well, and even they built these pyramids for a reason.
Yeah.
Right? And you can go to any woo-woo shop and buy some sort of stone carved pyramid thing.
Yeah.
The pyramid shape has some sort of energy to do with it.
Yeah.
And I don't put a lot of faith into that. I wouldn't bet my life on things like that.
Right.
But when you have people listen to music because they like the way the music makes them feel.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of that type of concept where it affects you in a way that's inside that's not really measurable. So I think there could be something there.
Yeah.
But as far as it being an energy source.
An energy source. Yeah. Right. I don't know about the energy source. But there was at instructables.com this user named Dewey66. did an experiment, and he like
Shout out to Dewey66.
yeah, and he like uses the scientific method where he's like these are the items I used, and this is how I built. He built a wooden pyramid. He built like a pipe one, so I'm guessing copper, and then a copper wire pyramid, and then he put water underneath them, mostly at the like the center of where the center of gravity would be for the pyramid, because that's where it's supposed to focus most of the energy. And he used the water to water plants. So then he had like a controls group that he set in the same room but on the other side, so they weren't close to the pyramids.
Okay.
And then he got 16 people together and did a blind taste test with the water, and he also did it with orange juice. And then he has pictures and charts, and he says that the plants watered with the pyramid water grew 25% bigger. The taste test, most people picked the pyramid water, but
he was also spitting in the other one.
But it, like
runoff rainwater.
He said it wasn't like, but since there wasn't like a taste, they couldn't really say like if it was fresher. This is just the ones they picked enjoyed more. And then with the orange juice, the majority of people picked the pyramid orange juice and said it tasted fresher or newer. And then the people that didn't pick it, he asked, and they're like, well, there was definitely a difference, but like negligible. So he came up with the conclusion that maybe there's something going on there, but he wasn't like fully gonna be like, oh, these things work. But in the comments, there's a lot of people saying like, oh, like you need to do the test, or like switch where they were in the room, because like maybe it's where they were in the room that affected what it was. Because, you know, it's not like...
One guy, the regular water people were testing it in his basement, and the other people were...
Or like where the pyramids were. Because if you put the bottle of water next to the register and hot air is blowing on it, but the ones under the pyramid are not, you know, so you switch them and see if the results stay the same. And then someone was saying that they keep razor blades under a pyramid and they don't go dull as quick. So...
Weird.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, as you were talking about that, I was kind of thinking about that death ray.
Yeah.
The death ray is more of a cone shaped.
Right.
But you know, pyramids are it's a bigger base, a focused center.
Yeah.
It could be some sort of reverse of that, because who knows what? I mean, somebody probably knows. I don't know.
Right.
What kind of, you know, microwaves and Z waves and radio waves are bouncing all over us. Who knows what kind of stuff, you know, you get some sort of wacky energy ray or energy wave from a butterfly, you know, 200 miles away, and it hits your pyramid just right.
Yeah.
And it settles all the kind of zinky material in the bottom, you know. That could literally be an answer somehow.
Or if it's like, if grounding is right, where you like, you know, you walk on the grass and you're supposed to equal out your...
Change electrons.
Yeah. Well, if you have a bigger base and a smaller top, maybe it like focuses it that way, kind of like moves it around.
I think there could be an answer.
Yeah.
Scientifically even. But
yeah,
I'm not going to do the experiment.
And
did you hear about Joe Parr's experiment?
Joe Parr's.
He made like a model of the pyramid, and I'm forgetting the type of energy that he created around it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But he created an energy around it, and eventually the pyramid that he had built, the model pyramid, started to float, spin, and then it traveled to another dimension. And when it came back, it was like 20 feet away inside of his wall.
Yeah. It was some, like either pump electricity through it or
like hit it with waves or something.
Or magnetic.
Waves. Yeah, magnetic waves it could have been.
Yeah.
Because I think he may have built it out of copper.
Yeah, and he said at first there was like a force field.
Yeah.
That was formed until...
keep going.
until like it finally started like levitating, and then like he pumped it so full of whatever he was shooting it with that it blinked out.
Pumped it so full of whatever he was shooting it with.
Yeah, keep going.
We gotta pull back, Captain.
Yeah.
And then it was said that he did this experiment twice, and I'm like, okay, do it again and record it. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can say you do experiments, and they could have had the outcome. I don't know, but it's hard to prove something when nobody's around and you can't record it.
But that's a rough one because you can also link that to like the Philadelphia experiment.
Yeah.
Or the Montauk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which it could have been true, and there could be a completely scientific explanation for it.
Yeah.
I don't have that right now.
Yeah, and he recorded it, but they took the information from him.
Yeah, and killed him.
Yeah.
Just like I've had shit about like renewable energy and like welders that weld from water and cars that run on water and stuff, and how these people just vanished.
Yeah.
I've had these in my watch later queue for a while.
I've seen those where it's like, yeah, some guy comes up with the renewable energy, went over to Japan to confer with someone to make sure he had his calculations right, and then on his flight back, the plane mysteriously crashes.
Damn.
Yeah. I would hate that. Yeah, you're on an airplane and someone's like, "What do you do for a living?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm an electrician." "What do you do?" "Oh, I just found out how you can make gasoline from water."
Get me off this plane.
No.
And there's like some guy in a suit that just like looks over his shoulder at you.
Yeah.
Maybe he winks at you.
Yeah. It's like, damn.
That's pretty much all I had.
Yeah.
It was so hard to get away from the ancient alien stuff. Well, and one thing I saw was the dude from Ancient Aliens, and it is a fair point and thing to ask.
Yeah.
Where he's like, if all this work went into building these things, where are the blueprints?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I understand that. Like maybe you would, but also 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, you think a piece of papyrus is going to last that long?
Yeah.
Especially since people looted it. And
it's just like, it's hard to give answers so far away to fairly reasonable questions.
Yeah.
But that's all right.
Yeah. Have you heard about the Black Pyramid in Alaska?
No. Oh, not in Alaska, no.
Well, there's one in Egypt. It's called the Black Pyramid, but I don't think it looks black.
Oh, okay.
But supposedly there's one, but it's underground in Alaska.
Okay.
Because like in the 80s or something, China detonated the biggest A-bomb, but underground.
Oh, okay.
To like do a study of the Earth's crust, to send a seismic wave out to like kind of analyze it. And they said that when the shockwave hit Alaska, there was a solid chunk in the perfect shape of a pyramid underground. And of course, this like army guy who said he was stationed in Alaska, when you first go to a place, you want to get used to your environment. So he went and looked at a bunch of maps, and on this one map it says not explored or not filled in yet. And he's like, but the rest of the state is. Why not this part? And he happened to be watching the news when they talked about this China thing. He's like, that's the exact spot that I saw that wasn't on the map. So then he was watching the news because he wanted to record it to like get the coordinates of what they said, and he couldn't find it. So then he went to the news station to ask for their archive tapes, and they're like, we don't have those, we never did that. And he's walking out, just so happens that an intern is like, psh, come over here, some guys in suits came and stole that stuff. And he's like, whoa, that's crazy. And then later on he got transferred to Virginia, where they keep all the archives supposedly. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna go be friends with the archivist and be like, hey, do you have anything about
like a 5-year plot to seduce and fall in love with this archivist?
Yeah. But he's like, do you have anything about the geography of Alaska? And he's like, yeah, sure, go down there and it's this. because it's just the geography. Like, it's not going to be top secret or anything.
But it went more like he was holding a big stack of books, and when the guy asked him about the geography of Alaska, he just dropped it all.
Yeah. What do you want to know? But he said, like, he went and got the file, and he started going through it, and he was, like, 2 minutes later, these guys in suits came, like, you can't look at that. And he's like, but it's just geography, or, like, topography, or whatever it's called.
Topography.
Topography. And they're like, yeah, but you're not, it's a need-to-know thing, and you don't need to know. And so ever since then, he's been, like, trying to figure it out. And then, of course, he gets with Linda Moulton Howe, which, if you remember our cattle mutilation episode, she's a big person. She's the one that, like, broke that story. Mm-hmm. So she's already, like, a for-profit woo-woo investigator. And, yeah, I don't know what came of that. She's like, oh, and then, like, wants to investigate and talk to other people and blah, blah, blah. But, and then there's, like, you can watch tons of videos of people saying they used to be Army and how they told them not to look into it. And some people in the comments were like, oh, my dad was in the Army, and they would blindfold him and then take him into this cave where they had to weld, like, joints together to, like, for supports for the cave, but they never told him what was inside. And he's like, I think it was connected to the Black Pyramid.
Oh.
And then there was this guy, Nathan Campbell, who went out for, like, a summer in Alaska. In Alaska, there's, like, no roads, so you usually get dropped off by a lake. You spend the summer out there hunting or doing whatever, and then you get picked up, like, a month or two later. Well, he never came back, and they only found his camp with his tent was collapsed, and his journal was chewed on by rodents, and the last entry said he was going for water. And anything that I've heard, like, officially didn't say there was anything weird in his journal. And the only thing that these pyramid believers say is that when he was flying out there, the pilot said that Nathan said he was going to go look for this Black Pyramid. And that's, I mean, if it was in his journal, do you think someone would say something? Or unless his family's like, oh, he's crazy, let's not talk about that. But so this got to Reddit, of course, and this guy Green Turman, or at least that's what his handle is on there, is setting up this expedition to go explore the area that he was at, maybe retrieve his body, but also see, what the fuck's out there.
Yeah.
And, like, the last update was from November this year, 2024.
Oh, wow.
And, like, he's like, I just got my sat link so I can have internet out there, and I'm going to document the whole process. And he's trying to get a crew together through Reddit and, like, talking about how he's going to he's got most of the money to do, like, a LiDAR scan of that area.
Oh, that's a lot. Sounds like a lot of money.
Yeah, and he's like, but it's Reddit, so, like, how legit is this guy, and, like, what's going on? But that's just, if the Nathan guy was so into the Black Pyramid thing that he actually did go out to look for it and not really prepared for the ruggedness of the environment, it's nuts to begin with.
I mean, even if you're prepared for being rugged, like, there's bears and shit.
Yeah, it's Alaska. And then for these other guys to then be like, oh, we believe it so much that we're also going to go out there and try to find his body and figure out the truth. Like, that's a lot. That's a big jump in logic, because you can tell me there's Sasquatch, but am I going to go spend a bunch of money and then go, like, backpacking through Oregon by myself?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, he's building a team.
Well, he's building a team, but
the other guy,
if he got sucked into it enough that he actually, that's why I'm going to go out there.
I feel like there's definitely people that walk around Oregon looking for Sasquatches alone.
Yeah, but I don't know. That'd be a lot of. That'd be a big obsession to finally be like, well, I'm going to charter a plane out there and go find it myself.
Yeah.
Because I can't find the truth on the internet, so I got to go see this with my own eyes.
Yeah. that is a big obsession.
Yeah.
I've never been obsessed with anything like that.
No, not even like.
But if I have a craving for food down the street, I might not go get it. You know?
Yeah, I was trying to think. I don't know if they still do it, but the Quad City Times had that like Buffalo Bill crossword they would do on Sundays.
Oh, okay.
Where it's a crossword, but they just give you 2 words.
Buffalo and Bill.
But for each, like, A crossed, and then fan. And then, so, like, and then you have to, like, figure out the other ones and then piece it together.
Huh.
Oh, and
Come
see,
on, Dave.
Sorry. Then piece it together and then turn in your answers. And then if you get it, you win, like, it's a pot. It starts at, like, 200 and then 400 and then 600 until somebody gets it. But all it is it gives you words. There's no questions, I don't think, unless the questions and then both words can work with the question.
I would think that they're not necessarily questions, but clues.
Yeah.
I would think that the 2 words would be the clues, but it's such a limited clue.
Yeah. And then so you have to be able to piece it all together.
So what you're saying is you were obsessed with this for a while.
A little bit, but not enough to be like, oh, I'm going to make 5 copies of this and then try 4 different ways and then turn them all in and then see, I wasn't that obsessed. It was just like if I was bored and then I would go, they used to have a mailbox, so I would drive to the Quad City Times and stick it in the Buffalo Bill mailbox. But
that's cute, Dave.
But like not obsessed enough to make like a string chart and like go hardcore on it.
String chart, yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I did see, and I didn't write much down about it, but off the coast of Cuba and off the coast of I can't remember. It was near Japan, between Japan and China. Yeah. And I think maybe we covered that on an ocean.
The one. Dragon Triangle.
Yes.
Yes, with the
underwater
Paranatural boys.
Oh yeah. They're off the coast of Cuba, and then in the Dragon's Triangle, there's 2 areas, for lack of a better term, where it looks like essentially man-made structures have sunk to the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
With like hard carved 90-degree lines. The one off Japan looks like a whole underwater city.
Yeah.
And there's a pyramid in that. And off the coast of Cuba, there's I think a couple of pyramids.
Yeah.
But everything I watched was like, yeah, these can be made underwater.
Right.
This could be a natural.
Well, that's like the pyramid in Antarctica.
Yes, yeah.
Where they're like, actually, it's just a jagged ridge, but when the light hits it just right, it looks like a pyramid kind of thing.
But then that one they talk about, so the one off Japan, they talk about an ancient Japanese city that there's documentation of it in Japan and China.
Yeah.
But it has never been found, so they think that's that. And then the one in Antarctica, there's several cultures, South American cultures, I think, or maybe like island cultures that talk about their ancient ancestors coming from that area of Antarctica. But when they came from there, it was a more lush green jungle.
Right.
So that's something that they talk about for that Antarctica pyramid. But it's also like, yeah, ancient people think a lot of things.
Yeah. And we don't really know because
we ain't there right now. We can't ask them.
That's 4,500 years ago.
Yeah. Well, that's all right.
Yeah, I mean, 4,500 years from now, they'll be
digging up the Earth's crust.
Yeah, and they'll be like,
punch a hole in the fabulous Blue Ribbon Lounge.
Yeah, and they'll be like, oh, they worship the gods with big tiki heads and a blue ribbon.
Their culture obviously adored this blue ribbon.
Yeah, and when they play back the tapes, they'll be like, oh, and they were a super superstitious culture too.
They believed in many monsters and creatures from beyond.
Yes, and medical mishaps and human feats.
And that'll be fun to learn.
Yes.
Oh my god, a time traveler just popped into the Blue Ribbon Lounge. I wish I had some voice thing to be like,
Yeah. No, actually, the time travelers that just popped in the Blue Ribbon Lounge, you guys.
You guys, thanks for making it to the end of the episode.
Yes.
Hey, ancient civilizations are an interesting one for sure.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot from them, but you also have to be a little skeptical about the people talking today.
Right. And if it has to do with aliens and stuff, always take it with a grain of salt. And you have the internet at your fingertips. You can also do your own research.
Yes. We just compile some facts and I just puke them out a little bit at a time.
Throw it right in your ear hole.
But thanks again so much for stopping by. And you know what? If nothing else, be good to yourselves.
Yeah, so remember, with the new year, it's another chance to get it right.
Are you ready?
Yeah.